Mystical Musings Podcast.
Welcome to the Mystical Musings Podcast, our new episode. I'm your co-host, Brenton, down in Texas.
And I'm Rachelle, and I'm coming from Eugene, Oregon. And happy to be here today. I think the topic that we're going to cover today is really kind of a live wire. Like, it's coming from real organic responses to what's happening in the world right now, because shit's kind of crazy. And we want our offerings and our talks to be anchored in what's real, what's authentic, what is meaningful to people at this time in history, in their lives. And so this came out of a conversation I had with one of our other staff members a few weeks ago. And you're talking about, how do you trust in times of chaos, and how do you trust yourself when everybody and everything is telling you not to trust yourself? And we did a little bit of a talk about this last week with the rest of the staff, and Brenton and I thought it would be cool to dive even deeper. This is an important topic.
Yeah, and it's a big one too. So it's not just like a live wire. It's a huge live wire, like one of those big underground sea cables right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it feels pertinent, and it at kind of a glance it may not. It's like, okay, well, what does trust really have to do with the fact that things are hard or expensive or kind of crumbling around right now? But I think that in times where there's a lot of change, there's a lot of transformation, and a lot of things that maybe feel like they're just out of our like day-to-day control, like big things are happening, it can be hard to trust just alone that everything's going to be okay. So, when we're talking about trust, it's like there's a lot of different levels with it. It's like, can I trust myself to do what I say I'm going to do? Can I trust that the sun's going to come up in the morning? Can I trust that I'm going to be safe tomorrow night? It's like there's a lot of different ways that we can look at trust, and depending on your situation right now and where you are in this world or in this country and the color of your skin and the language that you speak, it's like you're going to be having a different experience with trust with safety, trust with yourself, trust with the future and what that's going to bring. So it's a really complex issue right now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. We could probably talk on this, as we always say, forever. But one of the things that's coming to me as you're talking is this sense of like dilating and narrowing the focus given the circumstance, right? So if it's like shit is hitting the fan right here, right now, like I don't know if I have, enough money to pay my next bill, I'm going to really narrow that focus on one hand, at least, and say like, okay, in this moment, what is a resource for me? Can I trust that the next breath is going to come? And that doesn't pay the bills, and it doesn't get you all the way to that point where you're going to find the money. But what it does is it gets you through each moment, and you take it moment by moment by moment. So it can be really helpful to narrow that that lens. Sometimes things are so crazy that we can't have this broad vision of like, it's all going to be okay. It's just too much. And so we really have to dial it down and say like, okay, what's the bite-sized amount that I can get through, and I can trust that moment. So that's one piece. And then the dilation I'll go into in a little bit maybe, but if you want to say anything about that narrowing.
Just that it kind of feels like, depending on what state our nervous system is in, we're going to have different experiences of trust. And if my fight or flight system is just kind of active and going haywire, then I'm going to need bite-sized trust to kind of get me through. Yeah. But the more that I'm taking those baby steps, then it's like, that's more of what opens me up to those bigger experiences of like longer term trust, which I probably can't reach if I'm like eyeballs deep in the weeds and the hell or whatever else is there.
Totally. It reminds me too of something that we touched on in, I think it was Asteya in the yoga group, which is like tuning in to different layers of where our truth is, right? And how much does truth and trust kind of, or authenticity, relate to each other, and how that relates to the nervous system, right? It's like, if we're in survival mode, our brain is going to be shut down. We're operating from, kind of like instinct in a lot of ways. And so if we're looking to find trust there, we're going to have to kind of drop below that. We're going to have to come from the heart, or, maybe there are some people out there right now. I mean, definitely are people, but that are watching this video or listening to this, where it's like, it's real time. Like, I don't know if I'm going to, be able to eat my next meal or something like that. Then you're going to come more from the gut, not just because it's about food, but because that's an important part of where trust is coming from, of like, okay, I'm going to move this way and tend to this particular need. If it's not that immediate, I think we can drop below what's happening in the brain and the nervous system to the heart. And again, coming back to that more moment to moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And part of what I hear you talking about is like the embodied sense of trust, and how that's going to kind of change depending on what we're experiencing too. And like, just like nervous system aside, right? It's like, there's a difference between how trust it feels and how it's experienced in my head versus how it's experienced in my heart versus how it's experienced in my stomach or my knees or my feet, or whatever else. And I think that's part of the challenge that is just being a human in Western society today, is that, we have a lot of just influences and stimuli telling us to trust these things, right? Trust our leaders that they're providing what they say they're providing, to trust that these products are going to bring us happiness, right? There's all of these ways that we're being asked to trust. And a lot of it is it's very brow centered, right? It's like, oh yeah, that sounds good. I think I want that. I think I need that. I think I'm craving that. But we're missing that like heart and gut sense of trust that you're talking about, which is like, well, what do I really need right now? And can I trust myself and my body and what it's telling me, rather than needing to place my sense of trust in somebody or something or someone outside of me that's going to tell me what I need.
That's right. And this is sort of where we came to the other day when we were talking, is like, simultaneously we're going deep inside of ourselves, and then that also takes us into something that is way beyond ourselves, right? And this piece of like, we're constantly bombarded. I mean, let's set aside politics right now. Just with the media, we're constantly bombarded with like social media and just regular media, news, television shows, movies, of like, this is what's real. This is what you should trust, this belief system, this ideology. This is the way life is. And also, this is true in most medicine right now, is like, you trust the doctors, you trust the medical system, you trust the insurance, and we see systems are starting to fail. And one of the things that it's really bringing us to is we are going to have to be more self-reliant and dig really deep inside of us. And we have it in us. We're meant for this truth and this trust in ourselves, not in this like rugged individualism. I'm not saying that's not where I'm going with the trust, because trust is also connected with your community and your environment and spirit. But we do have this capacity, and we have to relearn how to really trust and kind of move through all of this information that we're getting that's sending our head all over the place. We're diving deep into the heart, and just even sensing, so that we're talking about it kind of from a theoretical point in some ways, but it's like even sensing into, what is it when you feel into the heart? What is it when you feel into the gut? How do you know that you can trust that? Right? There's a different rhythm, right? If you're practiced at it, and this is where somatics really comes on board and is helpful. If you're practiced attuning to the heart, you're practiced attuning to the nervous system in the gut, there's a different rhythm to it, and you can start to hear it, and you can start to see the wisdom from those places. And if you want to learn more on this, in some of the practices that we did in our Asteya yoga video. Check that out, and that'll help kind of get you into some of those practices if you want to explore that.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that resource, because I mean, that's partly what we're trying to do with our virtual programming, is give people like a community and a kind of library of effective practices, so that as society and our systems, like you mentioned, are kind of crumbling down around us, we have tools that are helping us build a sense of foundation inside.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe there's a question that comes to my mind, which is, how do we, or what are your insights about how do we kind of make this transition from a sense of trust into these systems outside of ourselves that are starting to collapse, so that how do we move that sense of trust back inside, so that it's not this like self-righteous, kind of isolationist way, but in this, I am responsible for me and to me, so how can I give to myself as I give to community in a way that's like balanced and healthy and beneficial for us all?
Yeah.
Because trust doesn't just like, right now it's hard for me to imagine just moving into a new community with people and just trusting everybody. Totally. Because of the world that we live in right now. So it's like, how do we bridge those gaps between where we are now as things crumble into this kind of rekindled old way of community and trust and being?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. And I would say, there are a myriad of ways. They're different for different people. And we're going to touch on a few of these things. But what's coming to me right now is vibration. This is a weird thing to say. But again, these practices that we were doing a while ago, what's the vibration of the mind, the mental capacity? What's the vibration of the heart? And we can do the guts too, but let's just stay at the heart. Can we feel the difference between the vibration and the mind? This tends to be a little bit more rapid and rational and external, and the heart tends to be a little bit slower and tender and more emotional. And if we just start there, even just thinking about, am I here or am I here? And then we walk out into the world and it's like, what's the vibration that matches what's here? Then you start to get into like, I can trust myself. It's just like, in some ways, it's what's coming to me is like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You drop into the heart and you start to feel that vibration, and it's like, there's satiation. There's this comfort sense that can come up, and it sort of teaches us itself. If we start to listen to it, we start to listen to, well, okay, I think if we just think on a physical basis, the heart as an organ, right? It's with us our entire lives, beating without any input from us. It's literally sustaining our lives along with the breath, right? That's an incredible miracle. There's got to be something in there that we can trust. So we tune into the heartbeat, right? And then we start to know, like, okay, there's something there. And then we start to look around, like, where is there resonance with the heart in the world? And so then there's that inner and outer. That's one way for that question.
Yeah, that's so good. When I think about trust elementally, I feel like trust is a very earthy quality. And I think that there's, like when we plant a seed, there's this miraculous magic that happens with trust there, because we trust that with a little bit of like elemental nurturing, that literally an entire, infinitely seed producing tree can come from a single thing this big. That requires a lot of trust, but we just kind of take it for granted. And one of the things that I hear you saying is like, when we move out of the head, and whether that's moving like more into the core of our body, ourself, or moving out of our head into our relational field with the natural world around us, that it's easier to experience trust, because like thinking is a surefire way for me to move out of the vibration of trust. If I think enough about something, I can start to mistrust it. And while I think that there's times where that's good, right? We start talking about discernment, but I think that the more that we're, like what you're saying, we're tapping into the deeper, more grounded parts of our body and the ways that we're connected with the world around us, that it's easier to see trust, because, it's hard for me to doubt that the sun's going to come up tomorrow morning. It's going to rise in the east. It's hard for me to doubt that these seasons are going to change and spring is going to come again and it's going to get cooler and then it's going to get warmer. It's like, I don't doubt those things. I have a lot of trust with them. So maybe then the more that I'm in the natural world and I'm not so much caught up in here, it's easier for me to just be in a place of trust in general. And so for me, I think that's one of those kind of baby steps that if I'm having trouble trusting Western society to take care of me, trusting that humanitarians are going to come and kind of save us from this judgment kind of discrimination that's happening right now, that's a little challenging for me. But if I can get in the natural world and just kind of remember and trust that life is going to continue, it kind of helps me get out of that chaos that happens in my head. Mm-hmm. And I think that eventually kind of opens the door for me to just be more trusting with my own personal experience too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Thanks for saying that, because sometimes it's hard for people to go inside. Maybe there's trauma or something like that. And so the body can be a place of not necessarily trusting. So going into nature can really be that. And that's a resource for me too. And it's one of those things where it's like, that's the grand big vision that reflects back inside of me. It's like I step into nature and I just feel instantly connected. And it takes all of that, mental chaos away. And it's like, oh, it's right here. Here's what's meaningful, life-sustaining connection, right? Here's beauty. It's right here in front of me. The air is fresh and oxygen is supplied in every moment. And so that's going to a very deep primal trust. And it doesn't pay the bills, but if we can recalibrate our nervous system to that deep primal trust, it'll start to ripple out into other areas of our lives.
Part of what I hear you saying is that there's qualities of trust that are starting to emerge in our conversation. And of those, I can see that trust is more of an embodied phenomenon than it is a thinking or head phenomenon. And that also that trust is a present moment function. And that the more present I am, it seems like the easier it is to be in places of trust that matter.
Thanks for saying that. That reminds me of what I was going to say. And you kind of spoke to this too, which is like, especially in the world right now, there's a lot of things that we need to feel like we need to figure out. And so that sends the mind spinning. And for me, and maybe for quite a number of people, it creates anxiety. And one of the experiences that I have with anxiety is my mind moves faster and faster to try to figure out the answer so that I can, rest in this place of trust or security or comfort or something like that. And, I've been around long enough to know that doesn't work. The mind actually can't figure it out. And there's some amazing quote by Einstein or something like that, where a problem cannot be created a problem cannot be solved at the level that it was created. Well, a lot of problems that are going on in the world right now are created at the level of the mind. It has to be solved at the level of the heart. And I think that's where we find trust. That's where community comes in. That's where our connection to nature comes in. That's where our vitality comes in, through the relationship between the breath and the heart. Wasn't expecting that to come out, but that's what came out.
I mean, but it's so true though, because it's like similar to many other things in the kind of pace of the natural world itself. Like trust is often a slower experience. And I think that's the whole, like, getting out of the head and into the body, because the body is a slower experience. I mean, yes, our heart beats, every moment, but like our digestion takes hours and days. So it's like, we really are earth energy. And so when we move into our place of our heart or our gut, it takes a minute to like even find and attune to that place, let alone like use it as a barometer for what's true or what's not. When we're in our head, it's easy to snap judge. I could judge real quick and decide that that's truth, especially if other people are telling me to judge in those truthful ways.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up like pacing, right? Because this is like technology and media moves at a really quick pace. And I think this is some of what capitalism is based on too, is like, yeah, you have 10 seconds to convert somebody into buying a product, you know? And so everything that we're exposed to activates the mind and wants us to keep going with it because we make these snap decisions, and that's how, you know, purchases are made and that kind of thing. And it's like, so everything's telling you not to look. It's like, don't look over there, this doesn't exist, you know. But wow, even just in the moment, I mean, let's set trust aside. Even just in the moment, dropping in, and again, sometimes going into the body doesn't feel good, but like feeling into that rhythm. Let's say the ocean, for example. Almost everybody can appreciate the ocean, even if it's like at a distance, right? You're standing on the beach, you're very safe distance away from the water, but you feel that incredible rhythm, that energy. And that to me is sort of like the heartbeat and the breath, right? And that's where it's like we start to slow into this other realm where there's connection. And I think where there's connection is where trust starts to build. With ourselves, with the earth, with other community members.
Yeah, and the more that we can not only touch into those like deeper, bigger phenomena outside of us, but we can dwell there. Mm-hmm. I think it opens the door for more trust to exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know, except yeah, the more I'm walking in the forest, the more I'm sitting by the ocean, the more I'm dipping my feet into rivers, the easier it is for me to see that, oh, there is a divine kind of order to things. There's a divine kind of balance to things that brings me ease, that brings me peace, and that opens my heart enough to actually let trust in, which sometimes it doesn't want to, to come in there. It's my heart's kind of closed off to those kind of things because it's scary.
You spoke to something, and I'm just going to touch on it because it's such a huge topic, but this is like this really broad view of this sort of divine order, which is like when we or people we love or, our community is facing tragedy, then it's like, where is the trust there? And that's like, that's an eon scale of time, right? There's forces outside of ourselves that we know nothing about, planetary forces, forces of the moon. And it's like, okay, right. We can just look very basic, look to the wave. In our human society, we would say we only want to be at the peak. And if we can trust the peak, then everything's going to be great. But the reality is that there's valleys in every wave. And if we can broaden our view and see, oh, there's a valley, but I know that there's going to be another peak again. That is also the basis of trust, being able to see this larger framework of like, wow, things are really difficult right now. And this is the way nature flows. This is the way history flows. It doesn't solve everything by any means, but for me, it gives me that larger, like, right, okay, it's not just like, instant, I don't know, death right at this moment.
Totally. Yeah. And that's more of that natural world phenomena. It's like, yeah, the tree is not going to grow and then die in 2 days. It's going to be a process that's human lifetimes. And yeah, sometimes, I know for me personally, I need to get out of myself enough to see those things and ideally to feel them and kind of resonate with them. We're back to vibration again.
It makes me think too, and this is somewhat edgy, because I certainly live with a fair amount of privilege. I will just say that up front. But when we can see that from those bigger rhythms, that enables us to really trust that maybe we can make some sacrifices for other people's well-being or for the community or for the environment. And we don't always have to seek comfort, and we don't always have to seek privilege, and we don't always have to seek the peak of that wave, because we know that we're part of this bigger web of life. And so we're not always pushing away discomfort. Like some of trust is inviting it, or at least accepting that that's a part of life too. So don't want to go too deep there because I know it can be real scary, but I think it's important to say.
That's God, what a bomb. I mean, a truth bomb, though, I mean, we've been talking about some of these yoga principles we've been studying. That is Satya all over it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me think of, faith is kind of a hot topic right now, and it's pretty similar to trust, and that's part of what I hear kind of in the background of our conversation. And I think that's, it's one of those, it's all the more reason to learn to build that sense of like trust inside, because I think right now the idea of faith in things outside of ourselves it's kind of being pushed, and whether that thing outside of ourselves is an idea of God, or it's in our leaders, or it's in ideas, it's like, and to kind of bring God into it, since we're just going into all the deep places, it's like, the more that we're kind of turning inward with things and finding God or love or compassion or trust or openness, inside, I think the easier it is to kind of drop down into those like more earthy, heart-centered, connected kind of points of reality, and then to trust them too. Yeah, rather than just letting ourselves kind of get kicked up over and over and over again into these kind of ungrounded places where it's easy to trust in things that are maybe not so real. Makes me think of the Bhagavad Gita, in the renunciation chapter, where Krishna tells Arjuna, most people, they look at the smoke and they see it for the flame, and they never go past that. And I think that's the way that most people tend to experience trust, is this kind of like more head kind of quick, like, oh, this must be real. But the more that we take that time to like go inside and ask, well, what does it really mean to trust myself? What does it mean to build trust in myself? And why do I trust myself in some ways, and why do I not in others? And to examine like what that is about, then it's easier to deal with other people too. But most of us are not doing that work inside. And so it's easier for us to stay in these like mistrusting or misplaced trust, with what's going on in our life.
Yeah. I just want to kind of pull apart just a little bit trust and comfort or security.
Yeah.
They're not the same thing.
Totally.
And so much of our society tells us that they're the same. And then we start to up here seek out or panic if we don't have the things that we're supposed to have, right? And it's like, you won't always feel comfortable. You won't always feel security, but you can trust in the wave rising and falling, rising and falling. And it's a yogic path for sure.
It really is. I mean, I'm just kind of thinking now about, I mean, like, I want to just chew on and contemplate, like, what, how do I experience trust when I'm comfortable versus how I experience trust when I'm not comfortable. When I'm in the middle of like craving and aversion, polarity hell, like, where is the trust? Like, what do I trust? And is it something inside of me? Is it something more outside of me? And it's like, that's some work I think I need to do in the weeks and months to come, because it's going to behoove me.
Yeah. It's a deep practice. Yeah. And me too. I eternally.
Yeah.
That's why we explore this stuff is so that that we can continue to deepen our work and our understanding, and hopefully whoever's listening, that'll help too. We don't necessarily have the answers. It's just like patterns that we're seeing, what we've learned so far, and then we'll take it deeper and see where it goes.
I mean, it's certainly my hope, and I think I can speak for both of us, that we want people to leave, these podcast episodes almost with more questions than they had coming in. So that, you're really asking yourself and contemplating and chewing on these things, because we need to be chewing on them right now. There has never been a time more appropriate for like really contemplating this deep shit than right now in this country, or at least in Western society. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Just at least an openness to explore. I'd never really thought about that. Let me sit with it a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe for, everybody listening, some of the homework that you can potentially assign yourself is to, kind of play with where is trust in my body at different times based on what I'm experiencing in my life. When do I feel like it's like my head is heavy with all of these ideas of trust, or if it's, if it's more in my heart, what's my emotional experience? How is it different? Because my experience is typically that it's more of a calm thing. But then also to start to examine, like, what are the steps that I need to take so that I can start to foster trust in myself, first of all, before I trust in anybody else? And again, not in like this, I only trust me and not you kind of isolationist way, but, exploring, do I depend on other people for my sense of trust or loyalty or follow through? Or is that something like, can I rely on myself to do the things that I want and need to do for myself? And, that's something that I've kind of been struggling with lately, is when it comes to my own self-care, can I trust myself to take care of myself in the ways that I need? And lately the answer has been no, because there's been so many things stacking. So it's like, and again, we're talking about these layers of trust here.
I mean, you brought up a really important point, and here we are probably towards the end, and there's so many pieces to it. But I know I'm running a business, seeing clients, doing, having a relationship, all of these things, and some exposure to the rest of the world, and I always get pulled off center, right? And part of trust is like relying on our own honoring of our well-being, and that's like doing the practices, whatever those are, meditation, physical activity, expressive arts, getting into nature, all of these things. That's part of what builds trust too, is like, am I doing the things that are aligned with my heart on a consistent basis?
Totally. And that includes both the things that we need and the practices that we need for replenishment and rest, but also the things that we need for joy and fun, which is just as much about trust. And sometimes I can get locked into this like, oh, trust is such this serious thing, and am I really like trusting in what's right? But it's like, part of trust is like, if I feel like I need to move my body or go build something with my hands today, or go run and be a dumbass and run through the sprinkler naked, like whatever it is, like I need to lean into those things, because if I can't trust myself to fulfill my own need for fun or joy or replenishment, then it's impossible for me to ask anybody else to fulfill that for me.
Right. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that in. It's a deep listening. And just like I keep talking about the waves, right? It's like we have to be able to ride all aspects of it. And to know that and to honor that.
Any parting thoughts for our audience about trust, or some things that you think they could contemplate about it?
I mean, I would say if you feel really disconnected, this is where support can come in. If you feel really like, I don't know how to trust myself, or it feels really unsafe in the body, that would be a really good time to get some additional support, a therapist or a friend, a real trusted friend, or, somebody that can really be present for you and really encourage you to experiment and to trial listening to yourself. I think that's the thing that I would say.
I love that, because I think, you and I talk about this all the time, probably every episode we've mentioned it, but just the importance of community. Right now, it's like, it's the ruling class would have us be divided. But our power is in togetherness. And really, I think that's our human nature too. So I love the opportunity to lean into the trust in the good nature of people and in community right now, I think is pretty awesome.
Yeah. And community beyond humans too, right?
Oh, amen. Yeah. To trust that the natural world is caring for me much more and more often than I realize too.
Yeah. Love it.